Good evening. I'm one of those people who likes to start on time. So I'm saying good evening to you. I'm Betty Brandt. I'm the director of the Community for Contemplation and Justice here at St. Luke's, and it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight to hear our stories, the life and afterlife of being incarcerated. Ellen Munns, who's sitting around here someplace, and she's down here, and you'll meet her later, and I started talking about this event 8 months ago. And then Ellen was able to find the executive director of Trusted Mentors, Jerry Wagner, and the three of us managed to cook up this evening that you're about to experience. One of the things that Ellen brought, she brought a lot of things. She brought the resource paper you have in your hands, but she also brought the professional storyteller, Sally Perkins, who is sitting in the front row here, who has been on this stage telling a story about Central Avenue United Methodist Church. Ellen brought Sally, and so Sally has been the coach for the 5 tellers that you're about to hear tonight. And Sally just told me a few minutes ago that she has fallen in love with every single one of them and is absolutely confident that you're going to fall in love as well. So that's what Ellen brought. Then what Jerry brought was Trusted Mentors, and Jerry brought the tellers. So these tellers are connected to Trusted Mentors, and you'll hear more about that organization a little later from Jerry. And then I brought this venue, Robertson Chapel, and a congregation that is becoming anti-racist. So this congregation wants to open its arms to the community and to be a justice-seeking congregation. And so I welcome all of you here for the 3 of us. The people who work the hardest, though, tonight were not the 3 of us, or even Sally. The people who work the hardest are the 5 tellers you're going to hear. And they've been working to craft these stories now for about a month or so. What they meet 4 times, Sally? Yeah, they've met 4 times to work on these stories, and they've been very diligent, very persistent, very resilient as they've worked hard to be here with all of you tonight. So they might be a bit anxious, as you might imagine. These people are not professional speakers. I'm used to sort of standing up here, blah, 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 but they're not. So please be especially enthusiastic about them so that they know how loved and cared about they are. One last thing I would like to do is say a prayer for them, and then I will go away and you can hear them. So let's pray. Loving God, thank you for these 4 men and 1 woman who are telling their stories this evening. Thank you for their courage. Thank you for their resilience. Thank you for your being with them every step of the way. Calm their nerves and help them know that they have a room full of supporters. And most of all, thank you for being our God. Amen. And now, the very first teller, who is Daniel Higgs, is going to come to the stage. Please welcome Daniel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Higgs, and I would like to thank you all for being here with us this evening. Giving us this platform to tell our stories means more than any of you will ever know. The title of my story is called Finding Myself, My Voice, and My Purpose Through Incarceration. Life hasn't felt normal for me ever. The youngest of 4 children raised by a single mother, I grew up quite differently than most. We moved about every 2 years to places like Wanamaker, Acton, Beech Grove, and New Palestine. The constant changes from suburbs to city to rural areas and all that comes with that always brought a seemingly endless set of challenges. I remember always being different and always being treated differently. I also remember being called things like girly boy, queer, fag, sissy, faggot, daily since 2nd grade. At the time, I was only 8 years old, and I didn't even know what those words meant, but I knew it hurt to have all kinds of people calling me these things. My entire school life consisted of constant stress and anxiety from the fear, hurt and pain from the never-ending bullying, anger and resentment towards God and my parents for creating me, not to mention the daily failures of always trying to follow the advice of people I looked up to that would often say, just try to find a way to fit in, or stop doing things that draw attention to yourself, even if they are things I did naturally, like how I walk or my voice. Eventually, all of that terror came to an end when in the year 2000, and only 3 months into 9th grade, I was kicked out of New Palestine High School for being gay. What I mean by that is, the principal sat me and my mom down and said there is just no way I could have a successful education at that school, and that if I just didn't act gay, then I would be fine. At that point, my only option for an education was alternative school, but that brought a new kind of trouble. Even though most of the kids there had been suspended or expelled for being troublemakers, it was the first time I actually felt accepted. However, I only went to school for half a day. Having every afternoon free with no supervision, coupled with me just wanting to start my adult life in hopes that it would be easier. At just 15 years old, I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, lying about my age in order to make friends with adults, doing adult things like driving cars, drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, experimenting with dangerous drugs, and having sexual relationships with men much older than me. By the time I was 18 years old and supposed to be graduating class of 2003, I was already using marijuana and crystal meth daily. I was in a very serious but unhealthy and abusive relationship where I learned how to steal cars. My license had already been suspended. I had already been arrested multiple times, and I had felony convictions in Hancock, Marion, and Johnson counties. Chaos continued for several years until in 2009, I violated my probation in Johnson County, and at 25 years old, I was sent to prison for 126 days. At that time, I was certain that I was going to do everything it took to change my life and never end up in prison again. After my release in 2010, I made so many changes in my life. After using marijuana and crystal meth for over 7 years at that point, I knew they had to go, but that was very difficult for me because both substances helped me tremendously with my anxiety, depression, and ADHD. Not having any medical insurance made it that much more difficult, but I knew I did not want to do anything illegal anymore. This was around the same time that they were selling K2, spice, and bath salts in the gas stations legally. So I switched to what was legal. Even though these were still drugs, I felt like being clean from the street drugs for 3 years was a huge accomplishment for me. For the first time in my life, I had a wonderful career with Popeye's Chicken as a corporate training manager. I was blessed to be able to open every store in this city. And even though I had no license, I still owned 2 cars. It felt like my life was the best it's ever been. But then in early 2015, they outlawed K2, spice, and bath salts. At this time, I had medical insurance, but it wouldn't cover my medications, and the out-of-pocket expense was more than I made in a month. I started having extreme difficulty sleeping. I had always had trouble sleeping because of nightmares and severe night sweats, but this was getting progressively worse. I started waking up from the nightmares, but I would still be in the nightmares. I would always wake the entire house up screaming in horror. Along with that, I would have involuntary hand movements, myoclonic jerks and jolts, and my vision was in rapid succession. And when my family would try to help rescue me from my completely destroyed room that I had no recollection of destroying, I would get totally combative, if I was even conscious or not having a massive seizure. The first time this happened, my family called the paramedics. When they arrived, I had stopped breathing and had no pulse, so they rushed me to the hospital, where I was immediately intubated and put on life support, which lasted 3 days. I had seized so bad I lost 23% of my muscle mass and had complete kidney failure. When I woke up, I was completely horrified because of all that I remembered from the event. I also felt like I had cheated death. I started using meth again daily because I was terrified to fall asleep voluntarily out of fear that this would happen again. I had several more of these episodes, but none to the extent of being on life support. They continued more and more frequently to the point that I had to be placed on medical leave from my job. While regularly attending several different doctor's appointments, it was not long before a neurologist diagnosed me with an extreme case of post-traumatic stress disorder, which he felt was the outcome from a lifetime of bullying, many traumatic situations, and several near-death experiences. I was actually very happy to finally know what this was, but at the same time, extremely disappointed to find out there's no treatment or medication available to at least combat the symptoms. He explained that this was going to affect me for the rest of my life and suggested I file for disability, as well as learn how to minimize the symptoms myself through cognitive therapy, breathing techniques, and online forums where I would find people going through the same thing. This was all just too much for me. For the rest of 2015, I became severely depressed. I was using meth heavily to not sleep and had many suicidal thoughts because I just wanted to die. I had been waiting on my disability claim for just over a year with absolutely no income when in early 2016, I received a denial letter from disability. Over the course of the next month, out of depression, a will to die by whatever means necessary, and probably because I was too much of a coward to take my own life, and the extreme drug use, I had managed to actually commit 4 armed robberies with a plastic gun. I remember speeding away from every single place I had robbed, just bawling my eyes out and screaming at God that he had to do something before I actually hurt someone, not realizing I already had. I just was not going to make it much longer like this, and I absolutely could not stand the person I had become. On June 4th of 2016, God answered my screams for help. I was arrested and charged with multiple felonies for all of the crimes I had committed. In court, they read my charges, and they were a lot, and told me I was facing 77 years. I knew my life was over and that I was going to prison for the rest of my life. Instantly, I had this out-of-body experience where I felt so grateful to just be alive and most thankful that no one was physically injured. But something else happened. I realized that I had been hurt most of my life. I made a promise to myself that I deserved better than I was giving myself, and that even if I was going to prison for the rest of my life, I was finally going to make my life count for something. From that moment on, I started really taking action to become a better person, to learn more about myself and others. And most importantly, I began working towards forgiving myself for all that I had done and all that had been done to me. I enrolled in every single program I could, especially if I didn't think it would benefit me, because I knew I would most likely get something out of it, and if I didn't, maybe someone else would get something out of it just by me being there. Yes, I was still looking at life in prison, but I felt so free. By 2018, and still in county jail, excuse me, I had been learning so much from all of the programs I was taking. I had also started putting all that I had learned into action. One night in my jail dorm where I lived with 45 other men, I had been having a conversation with seven other guys that bunked in my cube when another inmate told me to shut up and that I was no longer allowed to speak. Against my better judgment, I explained that this was a free country and that I was not talking loud or disrespectful, and that as long as God gave me a voice, I was going to use it. He flipped out and started attacking me. He slapped me, drug me off my bunk, punched me, and then took my entire property bag containing all of my food, clothes, and hygiene. If that wasn't enough, he even spit on me before he walked away and said, "Faggot, I bet you don't talk again." I got up and said, "Does that make you feel better, treating people like that? Does it make you feel like a man because you beat up the gay white boy?" Then I said, "I think it just shows how weak you really are." I thought I would die that night. A little later, I was crying on my bunk when a few guys approached me and said, "Man, don't let him see you cry. That just makes you look more weak." I lost it. I jumped off my bunk and screamed, like at the top of my lungs. "You all think I'm crying because of what he did to me? I forgave him as soon as he did what he did. I'm crying because I live with 45 people that consider themselves men, but you all stood by while he did what he did, and not one of you said or did anything. I'm crying because there isn't a single man in this dorm." In that moment, I realized just how strong and courageous I was. I started speaking up for myself and standing up for others. Quickly, people started gravitating towards me, and eventually the staff approached me to ask if I would be interested in teaching classes because I had been there so long and developed so many relationships with staff and my fellow peers. I thought they were joking at first, but they were serious. It took me a few days to figure out how an antisocial introvert like myself would even begin to teach a class. I knew a little something about leadership, but I also knew I didn't just want to be a leader. I wanted to be a servant leader. A servant leader is someone who leads from the heart and one that takes a servant's approach to people. After having spent 3 years in Marion County Jail, completing over 40 different programs, teaching dozens of programs myself, and impacting many lives along the way, it was now time for me to finally have my day in court. I was sentenced to 1 year in prison, 5 years of house arrest, and 3 years of probation, with a whopping 12 years suspended hanging over my head, which is quite terrifying, because I know I could do something as simple as jaywalk, and I could go back to prison until I'm 50 years old. I couldn't believe that I had been given another opportunity at life, but I knew I was going to make it count. I continued that forward momentum while in the Department of Corrections. I also spent a great deal of time working on self-discovery, communication, and people skills. It took me a long time to wrap my mind around the fact that I never even knew I was a leader until I was in jail. I wanted to help people from all walks of life see and reach their true potential, not just people like me, but all people. People often ask me, "How did you do it?" And I respond, "I can show you better than I can tell you." On April 28th of 2020, I was released from incarceration. To my complete and utter amazement, I was actually able to go home. I have seen nothing but divine favor and blessings ever since. Sure, there has been many difficulties, struggles, challenges, and a mind-blowing amount of adversity and criticism from the people, places, and organizations you would never expect. But you see, happiness, success, and freedom are all choices. Now I can finally say I am living for me and God. I now strive to do what I believe I was created to do. You see, we were never created to fit in. As individuals, by design, we were created to stand out. We were created to be extra. We were created to do the most. I wake up every day with an attitude of gratitude. I have had hundreds of accomplishments since I've been home, but I won't bore you with all of them. I will share that I have fought hard and succeeded in obtaining a valid driver's license, a car that I own with full coverage insurance, which is huge considering I have had neither my entire adult life. I have been so blessed to have a wonderful team of medical professionals that have helped me with my physical, mental, vision, and dental health. Not enough people understand how important all of those are. Just 2 months after being home, I started my own business called One of a Find, LLC, where I buy and sell antiques, collectibles, home decor, and much more. But I also receive many donations from people that I am able to give to individuals and families in need. But most importantly, on June 4th of this year, I celebrated 5 years since my last arrest, 1 year as a small business owner, 5 years of complete and total sobriety, and on that day, I officially launched a nonprofit called Indie Crime Intervention Task Force. I wanted to create an organization built on things like equity, diversity, equality, and inclusion that would act as a conduit to connect many demographics of homelessness, addiction, crime, reentry, abuse, violence, and food, clothing, and/or hygiene insecurities. Connect those people to resources available and people who care about them and see them as equals, all while providing mentoring and advocacy the entire way until we all reach a more sustainable and permanent lifestyle that promotes a quality of life many of us never dreamed possible. In closing, I would like to leave you all with a few things to think about. Equality is the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Diversity is the practice of including or involving people from a broad range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders and sexual orientations. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. Inclusion is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. What all of this means is that we all must go above and beyond to make sure every human from every walk of life feels equally included, treated fairly, invested in, and possesses the same identical resources, access, and opportunities as everyone else, regardless of who they are. Not only is it our duty to treat others this way, it is also our obligation to fight for them until all of that is achieved. While serving my time in the Indiana Department of Corrections, I was so blessed and fortunate to be invited to attend a life-changing event virtually that is called the Global Leadership Summit. I was able to attend due to the extreme generosity of an unknown Eli Lilly executive that paid for every prisoner in the entire state of Indiana to attend. During this event, I heard many things that changed me as a person forever. One of the speakers was a woman named Bazoma St. John. We had many things in common, but the biggest thing is that we are both referred to by others as chronic oversharers. Yeah. I'm almost certain this means that we talk too much, but we accept it. In her interview, she said, "People think they are being diverse and inclusive just because they invite someone to their party. This is not diversity inclusion. Diversity inclusion is when you invite someone to your party and you ask them to dance with you. Would you all please dance with me? Thank you."
Good evening. By way of introduction, my name is Montez Day. To get started, I want to ask a question first of all. How many NASCAR fans we have in here? Any NASCAR fans? Okay. Well, my story could be called Left Turn. Yeah. I was raised in South Central Los Angeles. However, I grew up in federal prison. I grew up in a household with a very loving family, a great aunt who supported me and has been supporting me since I was in diapers, a beautiful extended family from LA to Indianapolis. But growing up in Los Angeles, it was tough. South Central was full of gangs, drugs, and violence, and I wasn't an exception. I was involved in it all. But my first left turn came when I was 15 years old. I did what they said was I jumped off the porch. Who knows what that means? Anybody know what that means? No? Well, when you say someone jumped off the porch, when a little boy jumps off the porch, that means that he leaves the security of his family and his friends who are acting their age, who are children, being children, playing children games, acting like kids, and they start to act like young adults. They start to get involved in criminal and violent activity. So at the age of 15, I decided to jump off the porch into a drug dealing lifestyle. By the time I was 17 years old, I was responsible for transporting drugs from Los Angeles to Memphis, Tennessee, to Jackson, Mississippi, to St. Louis, Missouri, and right here to Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, I wasn't the one bringing the drugs, but I was responsible for it. But don't worry, the feds already know, because I made another left turn. At the age of 18, I engaged in a shootout with the police in Memphis, Tennessee, and the police was shot. And I was incarcerated with a friend of mine, and we were sent to federal prison. Now, while in federal prison at 18 years old, I had no sense whatsoever. I mean, I was so wild, I was young. I stayed in the hole, which is solitary confinement, for 10 months because I was just acting up. I was throwing stuff at the guards. I was just acting up, okay? However, I had a rabbit's foot in my pocket, and my case got overturned, and I got released. I got released at the age of 21. Well, remember, I was 18 years old. Oh, I jumped off the porch, meaning I stopped going to school as well. So I jumped off the porch and got in the streets. No more school, no job. I hadn't had an ID. Well, I had a few IDs, but they were illegal. I didn't have a real ID or driver's license. So when I went to prison, I didn't have a GED. In fact, I couldn't pass what they call the 8th grade equivalency test, which was called the ABE test. I couldn't even pass that. Well, when I got in prison, there were older gentlemen in prison that they had a habit of making you feel bad or making you outrage or giving you the fuel you needed to change when you had not done certain things like graduate from high school. So I got my GED. Well, anyway, as I said, I had a rabbit's foot, so my case got overturned. And I got what they call immediate release. I got a letter from my lawyer saying, hey, you're gonna be going back to court. They flew me back to Memphis, Tennessee from Los Angeles, California. When I got to Memphis, Tennessee, the lawyer said, hey, you can get out tomorrow. All you gotta do is plead guilty to this and we're gonna dismiss everything else. This right here, you gonna let me go? Yeah, I signed up right now. Gonna let me out of here. And they did. And I got out and I tried. I thought that, hey, I'm ready for this. But I had a little adversity. I met a woman, I thought I was in love. She got pregnant. We were planning on getting married, we were engaged, and we fell on some hard times. So I went back to illegal activity. Simple as that, another left turn. Okay, we still on the NASCAR track. I made another left turn. This time, I ended up back in federal prison. Left a beautiful woman who I was in love with, and she was pregnant. While in prison this time, I lost my relationship. I lost contact with my daughter. However, I still had that strong family support, which I mentioned, a beautiful woman here today supporting me, my auntie. And she tried to give me the best advice she could, and all of it was good. But I chose, when I got out, to make another left turn. Because just to be 100 honest, I was bitter. I was mad at the world. I had a beautiful woman, a family, and you just took it away from me. You put me in prison and I was just trying to feed my family. So I got out of prison the day one. The first day I got out, I was committing crimes. No hesitation. I was driving without a license and the day I got out. I was making deals and working out some plans and meeting people to commit crimes the day they released me out of federal prison. A little while, we keep going. I'm driving on that track now. Here comes the next left turn. I'm 27 years old. I commit one of the most violent crimes that you can commit outside of murder. I commit an armed takeover bank robbery, meaning I wore a ski mask and gloves, and I went inside the bank with a friend. And we took over the bank and forced the manager to open the vault and give us the money. Now remember, I said I was on that track, so that wasn't the first time I did it. It wasn't the second. It wasn't the third. I can't tell you how many times I did it because I lost count, and the feds don't know about all of them. But they got me for that one. And when they got me for that one, they threw me in federal prison, and I was facing, my guidelines in federal prison was 23 and a half years to life, meaning I could not get sentenced to less than 23 and a half years, but I could get a life sentence. For me, at the time, I was 27 years old. This is the biggest left turn I had ever made. In fact, I should have spent out and crashed. Why? Because I had a 4-year-old daughter that I loved, and she adored me. I had an 8-year-old daughter who I loved, and she adored me, and she cried at me just raising my voice. But my dumb butt made another left turn. and ended up back in prison. So now I'm in prison. I'm facing 23 and a half to life. Now, I've always had a love for books. I love to read, I love to learn. I love to learn so much that even when I was in the criminal element, when I was dealing drugs, when I was meeting people to commit crimes, they would say, hey, let's meet up. Where we gonna meet? Man, meet me at the Barnes & Noble over there by such. They like, what? I'm like, oh, do you know 19th and Central? Meet me on 19th and Central in that parking lot right there. I would pull up in this parking lot, be in the back of my truck reading a book. And when I seen them pull in the parking lot, I would put down my book and I would pick up my gun. And I would commit to doing my transaction. And then when they left, I might go inside of Barnes & Noble and buy me another book. Because I love knowledge, I love to read, you know. So anyway, I'm facing this 23 and a half years in prison, and I've left the two most beautiful girls I've ever seen in my life, my daughters, and I'm spinning, I'm crashing. I've almost given up. I've almost just said, you know what, I'm gonna go in prison and I'm gonna stab everybody and I'm gonna kill people and I'm gonna do whatever just to get this frustration out of me. This is how I felt. But I had a strong woman in my corner. Even when I wasn't even thinking for the best of myself, I wasn't thinking about doing what was right for myself and for my future, I had a family member that was there. She's always there. So while I was in prison, I'm still contemplating stabbing somebody. I'm walking around with a chip on my shoulder. The guys that know me, there were quite a few guys in the prison that knew me from the street, so they knew what kind of criminal I used to be or that I was. And they were watching me and like, hey man, calm down, it's cool. I'm in prison like, nah, I'm waiting for somebody to act up so I can do something to them. Anyway, I made my first right turn. It's time to get off this NASCAR circuit. Just going around in circles, don't you get dizzy? Watching NASCAR, do you get dizzy? I can't watch NASCAR because I can't just watch everybody just keep going left, left, left. No, I had to make a right turn. And my first right turn was there was a gentleman who worked in the institution laundry department. And he had what is considered a good job in prison. Think about that. You in prison and they have a thing called a good job. It's basically slave labor, pennies on the dollar, but it's a good job in prison. Well, he had what was considered a good job. And come to find out he could not read. And the superintendent of the laundry found out he couldn't read, and he came to me because I was the clerk. And he was like, this MF, I'm not gonna say what he said, can't read. I'm going to fire him. And I said, wait a minute. Don't fire him, just have him fold sheets. He can fold sheets. You don't have to fire him. Let me work with him, right? Let me get him over here to fold sheets. So when he started folding sheets, we started talking, and I found out he's never been able to read. He couldn't even read street signs when he used to drive in the neighborhood. And I used to be in his neighborhood. He had a well-known name. He was real popular in the streets. So me and him start going to the library 2 to 3 times a week, getting hooked on phonics. And I helped this man learn how to read. I stayed at that prison for 5 years, and within the 5 years that I was there, I earned a level of respect so much to where the guards that worked there used to call me by my first name. And when I decided to transfer from that prison in California to Terre Haute, Indiana, the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, the guards was like, man, you leaving? No! Because I was known to be a peacemaker. I was known to be someone who would intervene and assist people to keep people from getting seriously hurt when I could. I did it so many times, I almost got stabbed trying to protect other people. So when I got to Terre Haute, you know, I'm still reading, I'm still gaining knowledge, and I made one right turn, but I'm still not focused. I still don't know exactly what I want to do with my life. Well, when I got to Terre Haute, I made another right turn. A friend of mine told me about the adult continuing education class, and they knew that I had a wealth of knowledge about Black history. And they said, hey, could you teach this class? I was like, teach a class? I don't want to teach no class, man. I ain't thinking about that education department. Forget them. I'm going over here to do this. Anyway, He told some other people, and now I have like 3 or 4 guys in prison like asking me, hey, come teach the class, teach the African American history class. So I did. I started teaching adult continuing education classes on African American history and on psychology. Then I enrolled in the ISU, Indiana State University, Associate of Arts degree program, which they were running through Terre Haute, Indiana. And I earned my associate's degree in social behavior. Now this is another right turn, at least for me it is. Yes. So when I earned that right turn, I continued to interact with people and teach people. And I started to realize, like, wait a minute, I like teaching. I like helping people. I started to feel a little bit different about myself and about my life. So in the process of me doing that, I was asked to join a program called Stages. In the prison, Stages was a program that was designed for men who had borderline personality disorder, who used self-harm as a coping mechanism to deal with being in prison. So these men were known for cutting themselves with razors, attempting to hang themselves, trying to overdose on medication and whatnot. Well, to join this program, you had to participate in an apprentice program, which was a peer forensic specialist, which gave you knowledge of psychology, basically. Anyway, I joined that program, and for 5 years, I was a mentor to men who have borderline personality disorder and PTSD using dialectical behavior therapy. Anyway, that was another right turn. So now I'm finding myself enjoying helping other people. I'm enjoying it. I'm finding a way to give back to society after I've taken so much and I've hurt so many. So I get out of prison, 2019. June of 2019, I get out of prison, and that woman was there. That woman I told you that's been there all the time, she was there at the gate at 7-something in the morning. Yeah. She picked me up, and she asked me, what are you gonna do? You need to do this, you need to do that. I was like a little cup, right? Have you ever had a small cup, like a shot glass? No shot glass. Maybe a small 16-ounce glass, and somebody just tried to pour a whole bunch of water in it? What happens if you try to pour too much water in a small glass? It comes out, right? Well, that's how I felt. My family, some of them are sitting here in the audience today who supported me. They were just pouring water in me. Do this, do that. And I was like, I can't absorb it all. Being in prison is desensitizing. Being in prison, it fills you with anxiety and stress. Being in prison causes you to be paranoid. So when you come out and someone is just constantly force feeding you, trying to give you information, you're like, hold on, this is too much. I can't deal with it. Anyway, they were patient with me, and I'm thankful. So in the process, they told me to go to reentry seminars. In the first reentry seminar, I met a man by the name of Tony Lopez. He was working for Cafe. And when I met Tony Lopez, we talked for a minute. He said, man, you need to go meet that man over there on the other side of the room. I said, who are you talking about? He said, that guy over there with the glasses, with the clean face. I said, the little square-looking guy over there? He said, yeah, you need to go meet him. And his name was Ed Witowski of Trusted Mentors. And I met Ed, and we talked, and he was like, hey, you interested in a mentor? I was like, no, like, what is a mentor gonna do for me? Well, they'll do this. I said, well, I got a family that's already helped me do all that. So what else he said, well, maybe you can be a mentor. I said, well, I gotta get my life together before I try to mentor people, right? So anyway, go on. I go to a juvenile justice seminar. At the juvenile justice seminar, I meet a woman by the name of Tallulah Easley. She works for youth advocate programs. And when I meet her, she's like, hey, you should be an advocate for us. I said, I don't have time to volunteer to be doing this. I'm just trying to find my balance and get my life together. Well, anyway, she wanted to offer me a job. And they did. I got hired by Youth Advocates Program, and when I got hired by Youth Advocates Program, DCS said, oh, no, not him. Have y'all read his jacket? He shoots the police. He sells drugs. He robs banks. No, we're not putting him with teenagers or kids. No. But then they said, what have you done that qualifies you to get a waiver to work with you? And then I brought all my certificates. I brought all the letters that I had from staff members in the prison. I brought everything I could to show them that I had participated in post-rehabilitation. And they gave me a waiver. And then less than a year later, Ed calls me and said, hey, we're looking to hire a mentor match manager at Trusted Mentors. You interested? And I met Jerry Warner, and she hired me. She gave me another chance also. And my point is that people who have been in prison need a second chance, sometimes a third and a fourth, because you know how that NASCAR track is. It's four turns on there. Let us make our lap and come around and help us out. Help us get focused. So today, I am a mentor match manager at Trusted Mentors. I am still a youth advocate at Youth Advocate programs. And I just partner with Habitat for Humanity, so I could be your neighbor real soon. Don't worry, don't worry. I'm a changed man. I'm a changed man. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, my name is Tanya Rich, and when my mother told me marry a rich man, this is not what she meant by any means. I'll give you a little bit of background. My mom and dad, they were pretty special to me. My mother was a schizophrenic. She happened to be in and out of Central State Hospital for most of her life and most of mine. However, my father owned a business in Speedway, a three-bay service station. We worked on cars and sold petroleum products. However, they were not my parents my whole life. I was adopted. When I was about 6 months old, my mother wasn't living a lifestyle that was very supportive of raising small children, so my older brother and I, who's about 2 years older than I am, went to live with her sister and her sister's husband, so it would be my aunt and uncle. She also had another sister who had a 10-year-old son, and she wasn't, her lifestyle wasn't supportive to take care of him as well, and he came to live with this same aunt and uncle. So I'm going to give you the big picture here. My mom became my aunt and uncle became my mom and dad, and my cousin became my brother. And no, we're not from Kentucky. As a child, it was a pretty kind of tough childhood. My mother was in and out of Central State, as I said. My dad was always at the station since, you know, he worked open to close most all the time. So I was left with my two older brothers quite often. We never had a babysitter or anything. And let's just say that, you know, a friend of my brother's wasn't very nice to me growing up. So there came a point in time where I just begged my dad to start taking me to the station with him, and just after school and on the weekends and stuff, and so I would never be at home. So that's what he did, and my dad taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to work on cars. I can remove and replace your engine. I can remove your exhaust system. I can do just about everything. I can troubleshoot any kind of problem with your car. And ever since about 10 years old, I've been doing his books, which carried over in my adulthood, as I've been head bookkeeper for a department store. I worked for Simon and managed 72 malls across the country. I've done quite a few held quite a few accounting positions, and I attribute that to those skills that my father had taught me. However, when you're a teenager, 13 to 15, 16, you know, it kind of got old being at the station and getting dirty all the time. Plus, I was missing all my favorite episodes of the Brady Bunch, and I just couldn't have that. So at 17, a friend of mine from school and we decided we're going to run away to Florida and live this dream life, beaches and palm trees, you know, and just sun on the beach and having fun. And she got a couple boys to drive us down there. So we started our journey from Indiana all the way to Florida, but we never actually made it. We kind of got stopped in Cordell, Georgia. It's a little town about 80 miles southeast of Macon. And we had been stopping in every state at different restaurants and like truck stops, and the boys would leave us there at the restaurant or whatever and say that they had to go like pawn some stuff or go find odd jobs to do so we'd have money to get down to Florida. Well, when we reached Georgia, they picked us back up from the restaurant and we got back on the highway, and we found ourselves in a high-speed police chase down the interstate that ended up off-road in the country, who knows where we were at. And when the car ended up stopping, and all four of us got out and just took off running in 4 different directions. So at 17 and female, and I'm running by myself through these backwoods of Georgia for 3 days, sleeping in barns, in creeks. You know, I got ate up by fire ants, not knowing what's going on, not even really realizing the whole picture. And a civilian found me, and what I hadn't known was they had deputized a lot of the local people in the town, because it's a real small town, to help look for us, and we had been on Georgia's Most Wanted. Because the boys, when those stops along our journey in every state, they were robbing people, and at the last stop in Georgia, they had actually fired a weapon at someone. So now I'm looking at burglary and aggravated assault charges as an accomplice, even though I wasn't with them during the crime. My father flew down to Georgia, got me an attorney. I spent about 3 months in this county jail. And upon going to court, they said, I can't get you any less than 20 years in women's prison, in Georgia State Women's Prison. And here I am at 17, and I'm thinking 17's still a child. Why am I in an adult court? We're in the state of Georgia, 17, you're an adult. So the best we could get was the 20-year sentence, which means 20 do 10. And my plea bargain was that 10, 5 of it would be suspended and 5 years probation under the First Offenders Act, which I thank God for that. I signed the plea, so my dad got it to where I got transferred back to Indianapolis and I could do my probation here. So I had 5 years, I was on probation from the age of 17 to 22. Pivotal time in my life, you know, to be on that strict with 20 years hanging over my head. Well, when I got back to Indianapolis and I'm on probation, they made me find a job, so I just went to work for my dad. And that's where I met my husband. So I had just turned 18, I've been dating this young man, and I ended up pregnant, started back to school, ended up dropping back out of school my senior year, got married, we had 2 beautiful children together, but the relationship was very violent, extremely violent. It took me a long time to get the courage to leave him, and I finally did. I finally got the courage to leave him, but he had browbeaten so bad in me, you know, that I'd never make it with 2 children on my own, a single woman, and that I would never be able to make it and raise these kids, and you know, I was worthless and you know, these types of things, and stupid, and I just kept thinking to myself, yeah, I'm stupid, I married you. But you know, I did get the courage, I left him. However, my self-esteem was so low, and I had no self-worth, no, you know, value to myself. So I ended up in a lot of meaningless relationships and some one-night stands, and which led to 2 more children. And I love my children dearly. Those are my babies. But I couldn't do it all. I was trying to go to school. I was at IUPUI. I was working full-time. I had a full-time job. I'm an alcoholic. I'm raising 4 kids. I'm by myself, and I have no self-esteem. So I was, you know, in a pretty dark place at the time. And then one of the worst things happened to me in the world. My father passed away. And so that was like, you know, that was the hardest thing I ever had to deal with at the time. And I was not in a good place. And I ended up smoking crack, snorting cocaine, doing every drug, and just drinking nonstop. I ended up losing my father. He'd passed away. I lost my children. I lost my job. I lost my house. I lost my car. I lost my future. And when that happened, is when my criminal lifestyle reflourished. And this was I lost my dad in '03. So from '03 to '07, I ended up on the street, homeless, for 4 years. Just drinking and drugging and doing nothing but going down. And then I ended up back in prison on a possession charge, or in prison on possession charge. And then just when I think things couldn't get worse, after having my father pass just a couple years before, the day before I was released from prison, my son passed. He was 18 years old, senior in high school, and that is when I pretty much had a self-inflicted death wish at that point. I spent the next couple years I can't really tell you where I spent the next couple of years because I really don't remember a lot of it. And I ended back up in prison again. And from that point, something just kind of snapped in me. I said to myself, that I can't continue to feel sorry for myself. I can't continue to view myself as a victim. And I've got to just change. I've got to do something. I've already wasted half my life. So I needed to, I needed to do something to, get my life back on track. I got clean and sober, and for quite a few years, from around '07 to about 2015, and during that time I had one wonderful relationship, except I really didn't know how to act in that relationship because I never had anybody that really cared about me like that. So I kind of self-sabotaged that relationship, and it ended up not working out. But I entered another relationship, and this one, same as the previous relationships, extreme violence, the same browbeating, demeaning type things, and I actually escaped a very serious and dangerous situation with this man, with my life, with probably only seconds to spare. And as I left, he committed suicide. And that kind of re-sparked my bad habits, kind of ignited the fire a little bit, and I started going back down that same road, regressing, and ended back up in prison. This time, I really felt that I needed to do something better. And I know I'd said that to myself previously, but I just knew that I was going to die. I'm going to die if it doesn't stop. So I met a wonderful person while I was in Marion County Jail, and I think I bribed her to be my mentor. But she's been with me now. This was a couple of years ago. I spent about 10 months in Marion County Jail, and before I got sentenced on my violation, go back to prison, and I'd done my prison time. I've been out now for about 90 days. I have a job, at least I think. They haven't fired me yet. And I'm a full-time student, and I'm only days away from launching my new business, Stuff and More. And I'm really nervous, so please excuse me. And that's about it. I haven't done all the great things these other guys have done, but I've only been out for 90 days, so give me a minute and I'll be there, okay?
Hello, Chip. Good. Oh my goodness. I didn't look back. I've been up here talking and running my mouth. I didn't know how many people had come in. Wow. Before I get started, I'd like to share something with you that I learned this past week. I'm going to turn this thing on. So, during this journey of storytelling, Sally and Ellen have been really nudging us to tell our stories from the heart and not worry too much about the structure. They kind of put it in a little bit, but it's like a more flow. So this week I learned something that's going to connect us all. How many people here on social media? You have LinkedIn? Let's connect. You have Facebook? Send me a friend request. I'm going to show you how we can connect right now without social media. This is the next level. So all week I've been, let me get over here in this spot too. I feel like I'm still in prison. I gotta stay in this little spot. I'm sorry. Okay. So I found out something this week that we all have in common. You want to hear what it is? Memories. Memories. Memories, and I'm going to break it down for you because when you look online, it's a whole bunch of technical scientific stuff and it's just going to blow your brain. So I found the layman's term. Memories is a process that we use to store what we learned today for tomorrow. I'll say it again. It's the process of how we store what we learned today for tomorrow or the future. And so memories are what help make us. Memories link us together. And the best thing about memories is the emotions that they bring us. They make us laugh, they make us cry, and everything in between. And so my name is Ivan, and tonight I'd like to share some of my memories with you. (1977), Indianapolis Airport. I don't think it was international back then. Imagine me, 8 years old, getting off, to me, what was a giant plane, very big. And I'm in the airport, I got a suit on, and a tie, I had a tie, and my little bag. I want to call it a briefcase, but it was just a little bag. And I'm walking in the airport, and you know who I'm looking for? I'm looking for my mama. Yeah, see, I had just come back from Detroit. I was born in Highland Park General, in Highland Park, Michigan, and that was the end of my 5-year back and forth from Detroit to Indianapolis for good. I was here to stay. And I found my mom in the airport, and she hugged me and kissed me, and it was one of the happiest days of my life. And she took me to the west side of Indianapolis, 4415 Mission Drive, apartment 58. I used to know the phone number, but I just forgot. But that place had such an impact on me that I still remember a lot of stuff that happened. I had my own room. I had my own bed. I even had my own full bathroom. But it didn't come without responsibilities. You see, my mom, she wanted to teach me responsibilities at an early age. She taught me how to cook, she taught me how to clean, she taught how to take care of my responsibilities, take care of a home. And so, she was working at Ford Motor Company at the time on the graveyard shift. And she would come home to home-cooked meals, steak and potatoes, from her 7-year-old son. I thought that was awesome. I didn't know how different it was. I didn't know about poverty. I didn't know anything about the ghetto. But I just knew that right outside of 46th and High School Road, the air was fresher. It seemed like everything was brighter. I had a Schwinn bike, a 10-speed, that I would ride to Eagle Creek by myself. I'd cross the street, go up that hill. The air would be coming, the wind was fresh in my face. That was freedom for me. As a child, I really enjoyed. This was a time when you could go to sleep in your house and leave your front door open, and you may or you may not lock the screen door. These are the times that I lived in, that I grew up. It was fun to be a kid. I learned how to skate in the kitchen, pushing off the back wall. USA West, 47, yeah, I was there. Yep. I learned a lot of things. I learned how to fish, and that was some of the greatest memories I've ever had. To this day, it's a lot, but I'm gonna move on. 1986, we had moved to the east side of Indianapolis, in some apartments called Lawrence Green, and I was attending Lawrence Central High School. Yeah. Go Bears. But in the parking lot this particular day, I was going to catch the bus, and I remember getting on the bus, and I had a group of kids that I would hang out with, and we'd just sit in the back and tell jokes and laugh, on the way home. And I guess I felt some kind of a sense of entitlement, because this kid that didn't look like me was sitting where I normally sit. And so I don't remember what I said, how I said it, but he ended up using a racial slur. To me, I'm a laid-back Cadillac. I don't want no trouble. I thought I was a lover, not a fighter. Well, I proved myself wrong that day because I got suspended. I got suspended from school. So I come home, and I remember being in my bedroom. I was doing my homework, and I kept hearing this tinking on my window. Tink, tink, tink. I get up and look out. And it's another kid that went to school with us named Jason. He was bigger than everybody else. Jason was about 5'11", probably weighed about 163 pounds. And he had really long hair, like back in the 70s when they would go to Woodstock. And so he was motioning for me to come outside. And so I come outside, and I'm tired, I'm sore. And when I get in arm's length, he swings, bam! Hits me right in the mouth. I'm stunned. I don't know what to do because I'm confused, I'm tired, but I know I don't want to fight. And so one thing I knew to do was to grab him. I grabbed him, I held on real tight, and we went to the ground. And I'm just holding on. I'm not even asking him what's going on. I'm just tired. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just holding him. And then all of a sudden, he gets this incredible Hulk-like strength. And he breaks up out of my hold. And when I look up, guess who's standing there? My mom. She's holding a 2x4. She thought he was an older man attacking me. And the next thing I know, there's blacks on this side, there's whites on this side. Race riot. I don't take any parts in that. I did what I had to do. I'm gone. Go back to my house. But we ended up getting kicked out of the apartments. So not only did I get suspended from school, I got us kicked out of our home. So I had to travel to the west side of Indianapolis to live with my aunt. And I'll just tell you this, I had to go to Northwest High School, different experience. I don't have enough time to get into that experience for you. But I'll say this, at that school I met a kid that we kind of bonded. I didn't know anything about chemistry back then, but I guess that's what it was, we had chemistry. And so we became really good friends, and we started hanging out. I started hanging out with him more than I did my East Side friends. And in 1988, May 26th, I went back to Lawrence Central, and at Butler University, Starlight Theater, I walked across the stage similar to this, and I got my diploma. I graduated high school. I made it. That was a first. 4 days later, I'm on a plane to sunny California. I had joined the Marine Corps when I was a sophomore because my family was trying to prepare me to be this big executive. And we didn't have the money, so I figured, hey, I'll go join the service. My uncle was a Marine, my great-grandfather was a Marine. I loved the uniforms. I wanted the challenge. I had been an athlete growing up, and so I wanted to be one of the few and the proud. Wow, that's something. So I'm going to speed this up because we have a lot to get to. So this morning, I was thinking about this because I've been struggling with trying to structure, because I did 26 years in federal prison. I didn't come back. I didn't get out and go in. I did 26 years straight for armed bank robbery. And it was because of the friend that I had met and the stuff that I was doing that led me there. But, you know, I was trying to figure out how to structure this and say it and get it all done. It's too much. And then I read the flyers on LinkedIn, and I read the flyers about this program, and it said life before and after incarceration. And I said, these people are coming to hear my story, and they want to know about what happened inside. What happened to you? Because you know what's happening out here. You see it every day. And so I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm going to let you know that prison sucks. It does. It sucks. But just like these emotions that we have, there's everything in between. I've laughed in prison. I've cried. I've met some really good people. And the thing that helped me the most was that I learned to work on myself. And people would come in off the street like you that care, you know, that really care. And when I found that out, I went to every seminar, every class, when people were coming off the street, to try to learn, to try to connect back with society, because prison rips you away from society. You have to make a choice, because you can't have 1 foot inside and 1 foot outside. You got to make a choice. It's really hard. Can you imagine just waking up in the middle of the night and you know how you go to the refrigerator and get something and you might want a drink or you might want a snack on something when nobody's looking? You can't do that in prison because you're locked in a room. Imagine being locked in your bathroom. You're stuck. Your bed is the tub, your sink, your toilet's right there. And if that isn't worse, you got another man in there with you, or woman, in that distance. It's tough, it sucks. But I learned to master my mind. That's something that they can never take from you. Viktor Frankl wrote a book about the struggle of Jews in the Jewish prison camps that they had when the Nazis were prevailing over Eastern Europe. And that's one thing that you cannot let people take from you, your mind. They can lock my body up, but they cannot take my soul and my mind. And I struggled hard, and I learned about constant and never-ending improvement. That's a philosophy that I adhere to. There's always room for improvement. You can get better. But one thing, my message that I want to give to you tonight is that stop taking life for granted. There's so much that you don't even think about. Every day that you do that's just natural, you don't even have to think about it. And for somebody else, that's a privilege to earn that they can't even have. Whatever you put your mind to, you can do it. Don't limit yourself. We work hard every day, we struggle, we come home, we do things for ourselves, we do things for our family, but there's doubt. And I just want you to know that if a person like me that can come out of prison from doing 26 years, and I feel that I've been pretty successful reintegrating into society, learning the culture over again, because I voted, I'm vaccinated. Thank you. And I just got a ticket yesterday. I really felt like I was part of society, because that's what people out here do. And so, I just really want you guys to think about, you know, the freedoms that you have and the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you want. And my goal for me, moving forward, is that I was around people from all over the world. I was in federal prison, so it's a little different from the state because you're all over the world, diversity. I mean, I've learned so much. I used my time wisely. I got lucky. I speak Spanish fluently to where people that look like me don't believe I'm Spanish, and the people that don't look like me say, no way, you gotta be Hispanic. I say, you gotta be Hispanic. You talk too good. Your Spanish is good. Your Spanish is better than me. I play these instruments that are here and 3 more. I used my time. I studied. I worked on me. An attitude is one of the best things you can have. I love networking. I love this technology. I've met people from all over the world from right here with this device. The world is at your fingertips with this technology. It's not here to hurt us. People use stuff the wrong way all the time, but the intentions of this technology is for good. It's to help make our lives easier. If you don't know it, learn it, use it, embrace it, don't run from it. And the last thing I wanted to say is about these memories and these moments is that sometimes you'll never know the true value of a moment until it becomes a memory. Thank you.
Wow, it did fill up, didn't it? Okay. I'm Dale. I don't have quite the best and attractive story that my fellows brought to you today because my whole life I've been a thug, a thief, a robber, and in 1990 I made the final turn and I became a killer. It's hard to admit that. For the first 8 years of my bit, I hid behind I'm in the appeal process, and I didn't have to admit that I had done anything. Once all the appeals were done, I'd been to the U.S. Supreme Court twice and every court in Indiana. I finally had to take a hard look at myself and admit that I was all those things that I just told you. For the next 10 or 12 years, I enjoyed myself inside the system. I hate to say it, but it was home sweet home. Did every vice that you could do, readily available inside the system. Ultimately, I did 30 years. About 20 years in, I decided that I might outlive this bit and started trying to plan for the future, changing my mindset, becoming a better person, not constantly stealing from my friends and lying to my friends and lying to my family. And then I leveled down into more comfortable prison environments, finally wound up in work release up in South Bend. Was there at the beginning of the outbreak of the COVID thing, so they shut everything down. I had a little bit of money in my pocket, so I had been there for a few minutes. In April 2020, I was released. I had all intentions of staying up there in South Bend because I had a pretty good job, but I couldn't at the time because they had terminated everybody because of COVID and it had shut down. So I came back to Indianapolis. Like I said, I had some money in my pocket, so I kind of laid around and visited some family and did some stuff around here in town until July. I was in a program to where when I was first locked up, you wanted to go get a job, you go talk to the foreman, and he'd say, can you run that bulldozer? And I'd say, yeah. He said, well, show me. And he had the job. So nowadays we have resumes and interviews and online applications and all these things that I had never had anything to do with, didn't know anything about it. I was in a class to do that, had been there for about a week. I was doing pretty good in it. My parole agent comes, sits down beside me, and he says, "You got to have a job by the end of the week." I said, "What's going on?" And I don't know. My supervisor says everybody on my caseload with a serious violent felony has to have a job by the end of the week. I said, "Or what?" He said, "Well, we're going to put a GPS monitor on you." I said, "Oh, wait, I ain't even got that kind of case. What are you going to put GPS on me for?" He said, "So I know where to get you when I got to come find you." And so I'm thinking, okay, I got money in my pocket. I got new shoes on, pretty good clothes. I'm watching him walk down this really long hallway, and I'm getting ready to run. I'm not going back. 30 years, I'm not going back. The lady who was managing my case there at the program I was in comes up, touches me on the shoulder, scared me to death. I was in run mode. I mean, I was waiting for him to get through this door. She says, I heard what he just told you. Can you come to my office and talk to me for just a minute? She knew where I was. She knew what was getting ready to happen. So I went in, and she called. She made a phone call. 2 days later, I started at a place, some kind of thing they called, I didn't even know what it was. It's something called a social enterprise. Had no idea what that meant. Got there. It's a place called Recycle Force. They got this thing they call the Circle of Trust. So the first half hour to an hour every morning is dedicated. So everybody gets in a circle, and we talk about the things that we need, that we want, the things that will help us be better citizens and rejoin society. I'm watching this. I'm thinking, yeah, a bunch of do-gooders. It's all bull. You know, just like the joint, everything's just a bunch of bull. What do I got to do to get out of this mess? So I sat there at that circle for about 2 weeks, and I started watching those people who had asked for things. I got an infection on my foot. I need some help. I need some medical attention. I'm hungry. Can you get me some food? I don't have a place to sleep. I'm sleeping out under the bridge tonight. Can you guys help me get a place? And I see these people getting these things. And they kind of won me over. All right, so that baby lasted another month. So I stuck around another month. They had some major things going on at the facility that I knew a little bit about. So I got put on the maintenance crew, fixing some of the equipment that they had there. And then they had a big inspection coming up. And the person in charge of safety asked me if I would help them get ready for that. And so I started doing that. Then the training person asked me to start helping with the training a little bit. So I started doing all of those things, and I started then to notice my things that I was doing that was helping those other people, the safety things, the training things. It made me feel good. Kind of gave me a purpose. Something, so it wasn't just work. I wasn't just going there clocking in. I looked forward to going. Then a couple of the higher up people there asked me to join a group called the Peer Mentor Group. We were trained by trusted mentors. Thank you, Ed. And Jerry. How to communicate with those people and how to, when it was too serious for us, to hand it off. Because we've got about 100 people there, and my problems ain't nothing compared to what some of the stuff that they've been through. So when those young people would come to me and tell me the things that had happened to them in their lifetime that caused them to end up at Recycle Force, I thought, what a lucky person I am. some of the things that had happened to those people were just I couldn't imagine the things that had happened to those people. Became friends with a lot of them through the peer mentor group. Would sit and have circles and talks ourselves to try to work through some of their issues, because some of their issues go really deep. I'm just a thug. They got really deep emotional problems that they can't sleep at night. I sleep pretty good. So then it became this thing that was not a social enterprise. It was the thing that I had fought my whole bit. A lot of my guys in the joint would get close to getting out, and they would get talking about these reentry programs and how they want to come back and when they get out and make things better for some of the other people that had had such a hard time. And I'm thinking, every time I hear it, I'm nodding, yeah, good, yeah. But I'm thinking the whole time, man, I have given enough of my life to this, 30 years. I am not having anything to do with reentry. And here I wound up in a reentry program teaching. And the bad thing about it is that I like it. So it's not a job to me. Of course, there are things there that I do that get frustrating, and most of the hands-on stuff is hard work. But those other things are so rewarding to see that person get a house finally, or see that person get a bicycle even to ride around town, to see the person help them get some clothes because of the things that I referred them to the other people, to see them change emotionally because we've have mental health therapists there, to see them go through those changes, and they come in, and instead of with their head down walking every morning to the seat in the circle, they're smiling and talking to some of the other people, and they're becoming involved in this daggone reentry program that I hated so much the thought of, but it is really it's a blessing. The Circle of Trust now, I speak every day at the Circle of Trust. I make sure that they know that I'm there and that I care for them, for their well-being. I mostly dig on them about safety stuff because many of them never had a job before and they work kind of dangerously. So I will always point that out to them, the best way to do things, or the safe way to do things. I can't believe that I actually got a job that don't seem like a job to me. I get up in the morning, I'm not tired. I'm ready to go because I'm going to go see my friends and the people that I care about and the people who like me. I never really had people who liked me that much. They liked to be around me because I had money I stole from people, or they liked to be around me because I might have something for sale that they could buy real cheap. But they didn't really like me. These people liked me, and I feel good about that, and that's my story. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jerry Warner, and I'm an executive director, founder at Trusted Mentors. I don't have a story to tell tonight, but our job at Trusted Mentors was to recruit folks to share their story. And I think, as you can see, each person has their own story. It's uniquely their own. And yet they share elements of struggle and strength, perseverance, and people who are willing to come alongside them and walk with them. And so as they share their story, our hope is also that it motivates us in the audience to be willing to get more involved. It's why one of the reasons I tell people I do trusted mentors, because I like what happens to our mentees. About 90% of our mentored adults do not reoffend while in contact with their mentors. Which is a strength of, or sign of the strength of having someone walk alongside them. But I also know that every one of the mentors has an experience where they understand not just the person differently, but they understand the prison system differently. And it's that knowledge which changes them. And so we invite you, I know, to walk alongside in multiple different programs, because we have so many people reentering who need our support. And my final note is to thank each and every one of you, all 5 of you, for sharing your story, which is not easy, but which I'm sure has touched the hearts and minds and created memories for those who are in the audience. So thank you for being here. I'm not the last speaker. I think Jim.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I'm going to talk fast because I only have 4 minutes. I'm Nancy Cotterill. I'm here with my husband Jim, and we're founders of Unite Indy, and we belong to this church. We spent one lifetime in business in Indianapolis, and then Jim got the call to go to the National Christian Foundation, where he raised a lot of money that went all over the world for great causes. But after 10 years of that, he was really being nagged by God. And when God nags you, you got to listen. And he said to him, "You have got to do something about poverty in Indianapolis." From his work, he knew that good things were happening with churches and ministry all over the city, but there was very little collaboration, which would strengthen their efforts. So he knew he had to bring people together, not just the churches and the ministries, but businesses, government entities. All these things need to be brought into the fold in order to really impact poverty here the way we need it to happen. And that's why the name is Unite Indy. There are many areas in which we work, but we very quickly realized that one of the great poverty generators in this city is the 12,000 men and women who are released from incarceration every year back into central Indiana, who, with a criminal record, most cannot find work. The weeks of COVID, and that was back in 2017, but then COVID hit. The weeks with COVID restriction gave Jim the opportunity to build the very first website that a reentry can use to find jobs from employers who are willing to hire a person with a criminal record. They can apply online at secondchanceindy.com, and we're talking to more and more employers about signing up to give us jobs. To help that effort, Unite Indy's been a leader in the effort at Butler University's Lacey School of Business to undertake a statistical analysis study of the employment value of ex-offenders to employees. There's never been a study like that, as far as we know, anywhere in the US. And we can use it here, and others can use it to encourage employers to hire people who have a record. But jobs alone are not powerful enough to break the cycle for a lot of people of joblessness. We searched and found a course program called Jobs for Life that trains people that often had never seen anyone go to work. They don't have a map for understanding employment. And we teach them to understand the role of the employee, how to come under the supervision of a person who is going to tell them what to do, and it's not disrespecting them, and the difference in culture of a work environment versus that of jail or prison. The employment success rate is magnified tenfold with this training, and soon we will be mobilizing to enter every central Indiana prison and county jail in central Indiana to teach this Christian course that emphasizes the importance of godliness and the importance of an individual, and that we're supposed to work. For this, we need volunteer mentors. That's why I'm up here. And we're hoping to find churches that will adopt one jail or prison and walk with them, be mentors to the people as they go through these Jobs for Life courses, because they really need somebody to sit next to them and say, well, this is what they need, because a lot of it needs explanation. At the same time, we also want to reach the hopeless who are not soon to be released, those who write us because they've heard of us and they know that they're just anxious for a friend who will speak into their lives, either by email or through letters. We have an inmate correspondence ministry at Unite Indy, headed by another St. Luker, Sarah Cobb, who some of you may know, and she can provide any information you need if you'd like to be involved in that. You know, and it was my correspondence for a long time with an inmate that really focused us on prison ministry, and it remains one of the best experiences of my life. Finally, homicides in Indianapolis are reaching more than 120 just so far this year. We need prayer warriors in person or via Zoom on Wednesday mornings to pray for the city group with us. We're hoping to get at least one warrior from every church. Gee, we'd sure like a lot more than that. So if anyone here has been touched by these stories, which were wonderful, how can I stand up here and even talk after hearing you all speak? If you've touched by these stories or have an interest in working with us as a mentor, a correspondent, or a prayer warrior, please send an email to info@uniteindy.org. We'll contact you. If you can ask all the questions, we won't Shanghai you at all. But if you do reach out and help someone, you will also be fulfilling the biblical mandate to remember those in prison as though you were bound with them. And that is something that we should not ever forget. In closing, Jim and I thank you for the wonderful stories. Thanks to Betty Brandt, Trusted Mentors, and the Storytelling Arts people. And thank you for listening to everything tonight.
Hello, my name is Ellen Munns, and I'm with Storytelling Arts of Indiana. I'm just going to keep you for a minute before we go outside to the reception, where you can talk with our storytellers tonight or anybody else involved in tonight's program. But the main thing I want to tell you is that we want to duplicate this program at as many places of worship or other community organizations around central Indiana. So if you're involved in a place of worship or an organization that you think would like to host a program like this, please contact Betty, Jerry, or I, and we can hopefully make that happen. And just right before we go, I'd like to have Sally Perkins come up so we can thank her, and I would like to have all the storytellers come back up so we can give them one more round of applause.